My name is Algimantas. I live in Lithuania, which is a very strong Catholic country. I represent Creator as his ambassador to this planet, not only to Lithuania, but to this planet, Urantia. The name of our planet is Urantia, as it is registered under this name in the divine archives. And I'm also Apostle of Jesus, as Master Creator's son, and his partners, whose spiritual rank is Creator Daughter, and her name is Nebadonia. So I also represent the two founders and leaders of our local universe. And our local universe is just when you look up at the sky. So this is one super universe. There are 7 super universes circling around Paradise, which is the divine abode of Creator himself. That is the Paradise Trinity, I am. The 4 personalities make up Creator. And they have no any outer form, but their vibrations are being kept on Paradise. So if you divide this super universe, this sky above our head, into 100,000 smaller universes, these would be local universes. And our Master Creator Son and Creator Daughter, Nebadonia, have set up as a separate local universe, just one of 100,000 local universes in this super universe. And as I've mentioned, there are 7 such super universes. But currently the creation is being expanded in the outer cosmos, in the outer space. And it'll be thousands upon thousands of times larger than the currently existing, the grand universe, the 7 super universes. So as I've just mentioned before, Lithuania is a strong Catholic country. And Catholics are on the eve of the big religious holiday, which is called Easter. But this Easter holiday is a Jewish, in reality, holiday. It's the Passover celebration. Jews were celebrating the march of Jews under Moses out of the Egyptian slavery. So the Passover, or Pesach, is the Jewish celebration. But Catholics inherited this religious holiday feast from Jews. And now, if you ask a Lithuanian Catholic, what is the origin of Easter? They would not explain to you anything. Just, yeah, they're going to church, but since Lithuania was the last among the European countries to give up pagan belief for Catholicism, so they have a lot of pagan traditions even within the Catholic religious feasts, holidays. And one of them is just paint in different colors boiled eggs on Easter. Actually, on the eve of Easter, they have to prepare all the food. That would be a holy treat during the Easter feast among the family members. So this well-known to you epochal revelation, the Urantia book, describes precisely, in detail, all what happened to Jesus 2,000 years ago when he was arrested, and in what way the unlawful trial of Jesus was arranged. Unlawful, I repeat it. Jews even violating their own law by sentencing Jesus. And finally, Pilate gave the last pronouncement of the verdict to the mob, because he himself did not find any fault in Jesus, even though the Jewish religious leaders, the Sanhedrin members, and Sanhedrin was the council that was controlling the Jerusalem synagogues, but other synagogues in other cities were much more independent from this Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin had to apply to the political authorities of Rome, and the governor of Judea was at that time Pilate, and he didn't find any fault, any criminal violation against either Caesar, the emperor, or against even Jews. And that's why he simply handed Christ to the mob, because Jews had a tradition at that time on the eve of the Passover feast, just to pardon one criminal who has been sentenced to death. And the choice fell that the pardoning from the mob would come on Barabbas rather than on Jesus, rather than on the innocent person, Jesus. And that's why the Barabbas was released, even though he was a brigand, just robbing people and killing people on the roads. So the decision was pronounced by the mob, by the choice of the mob. Therefore, Pilate has washed his hands of this responsibility. At least he was thinking that he's innocent. It was not he who pronounced this verdict, but the mob. Okay, the mob is responsible. And he washed his hands in public before the mob. And when Jesus was carrying the beam of the cross on his shoulders, after he had been whipped to blood, leashed, he was exhausted, physically exhausted by the trial process, by the interrogation of him and so on. He would hardly walk, and that was also a Roman tradition, that that person who is sentenced to death should carry this horizontal beam of the cross on his shoulders, while the much bigger vertical beams should be already brought separately. And there were sincere Jewish women looking at the procession, and when they saw Jesus, they sympathized with him, while the Roman laws forbade to show any mercy on those who are sentenced to death. But they dared to weep for Jesus, and openly. And when Jesus approached this group of Jewish sincere women showing their sympathy with Jesus, he said, I will read this quotation from the Urantia book. Just a minute. I cannot find the place. Here. So Master turned his head toward the women and said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but rather weep for yourselves and for your children. My work is about done. Soon I go to my Father. But the times of terrible trouble for Jerusalem are just beginning. Behold, the days are coming in which you shall say, Blessed are the barren and those whose breasts have never suckled their young. In those days will you pray the rocks of the hills to fall on you in order that you may be delivered from the terrors of your troubles. He has foreseen the future of the Jerusalem city and of these very same women, that they would be pray for the rocks to fall on them to be delivered from these horrors of the troubles that are already on them. But at that moment, when Jesus was passing and suffering his physical torture, that was not yet the moment for the women to weep for themselves, because they did not see the future, which was seen by Jesus. And that's why he uttered this warning, not to weep for him, but rather they would weep for themselves. Today, I have to tell you these very same words. weep for yourselves, even though you do not see what is awaiting you in the future. But the times will be hard. The troubles have not yet started, but they shall start for certain. Because you have been living from generation to generation against Creator's will, against the will of the Paradise Trinity I am, against the will of Allah, against the will of the Father, against the will of even Buddha. That's why your mind is degrading, even though you may promote it by showing off a lot of material achievements. You are flying to space. It's an achievement. You have navigation which is being, well, ensured through satellites. You have communication among continents, almost instantaneous. You have comfort for your body, but you are not happy in your heart. The less so in spirit, because you don't know what is spirit. You don't even imagine that it is you who is the Spirit. And he does not even know that he is the Spirit. Weep for your condition, because being unaware of the Spirit, you produce a lot of bad things. You do a lot of evil deeds against Creator's will, even against your own spiritual personality. That is, against your true self. You are robbing yourself of your development. And since your mind is degrading, you are taking totally a wrong direction. And you are, in a way, developing the material civilization on this world just counter Creator's will. That is, to the opposite direction that the Creator has pointed it to. But for you it's too difficult even to grasp the meaning of my words. How could it be wrong and against Creator's will when we have such a enormous development in matter, intellect, in traveling, in reaching any country on the planet on the same day? But you have an enormous emptiness in your spirit, in your personality, which is not in reality conscious. Your consciousness is not the spiritual consciousness that Creator has provided you with. But you do not want to care for my words. for my warning. That's why you consider it's not reality, it's not true. It's my speculation, it's my fancies, and whatever. But definitely it's not real. Take my words seriously. What I've been talking about 30 years ago, I warned people that the current situation shall happen. At that time, there was an enormous enthusiasm, especially in Lithuania, because we became an independent country politically. But soon we lost this independence to the slavery of the pseudo-European Union. It's an artificial outcome of the satanic forces. Satanic, that is, Satan and Lucifer, the former leaders of the local system that our planet belongs to, and over 600 other planets, instigated and carried out the revolt against the Father, against Creator. And this, unfortunately, touched our planet, our humanity as well, as our former planetary prince, Caligastia, joined this uprising against Creator. And 36 planetary princes of other planets also joined this revolt. Therefore, we experienced another shock when Adam and Eve failed their mission. Just imagine, Creator has designed that the planetary prince would be the first spiritual leader of the humanity, of the planet. And after some time, there should arrive another couple of divine personalities which would be visible, that is Adam and Eve. And they had to procreate the violet race to improve the spiritual intake of the teachings from higher authorities, from higher spiritual personalities. But they failed their mission, unfortunately. So that's why our planet has remained without its own spiritual leader that would be permanently residing on the planet. Or at least his staff would represent him when he might leave the planet for some other place. But temporary, not permanently. And that lasted for thousands of years until our Creator's Son appeared on his bestowal mission and incarnated in the identity of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, Joshua ben Joseph, our spiritual leader, the leader of the local universe, one of the two leaders of the local universe. when he withstood the temptation of Satan on the Mount of Hermon, he politically, officially, formally finished the revolt against the Father, against Creator. But the roots have not been pulled out by the races, by the generations that lived after Jesus Christ. Therefore, all the developments that followed after Jesus left the planet, ascended to his throne, were still directed against Creator's will. Creator was not the foundation for the civilization to progress. Therefore, nearly 700 years later, after Christ, Muhammad began his mission. But the problem with Muhammad was that at the beginning he was just acting like a smaller replica of Jesus in a peaceful way. But that was not accepted by those who led local tribes. And Muhammad had to leave even Mecca. Then he was taken by some delegation to Medina. They accepted him as the prophet of Medina. And when he continued his mission in a peaceful way, there were no material reward for the people. Therefore, Muhammad made the crucial mistake. He accepted that it is possible to begin a military activity, physical activity. And that's why he began to simply to rob caravans carrying goods. And he was doing it in the name of Allah. And of course, those leaders of the tribes were happy. They were rewarded materially. And just gradually, Muhammad himself began to believe that Allah is helping him, assisting him. And that went on and on and on. And only in this case, Islam began to develop, because those in power began to feel that it is useful to support Muhammad because they are materially rewarded. And captives were not killed, but made just prisoners of war, slaves. So that also increased the power of Muhammad. His territory of his influence and control was increasing. And other tribes were frightened that the army being led by Muhammad is going against them, against their tribe, because Allah is assisting them. So how could we able to resist them? And they laid down their weapons without any physical resistance. And that was also an increase of the material wealth to Muhammad and those who were next to him in political and military authority. But it's against Creator's will. Creator is the source and center of peace, of love, of justice, of energy, of brotherhood, of development for the well-being of all, not of our tribe, not of our nation, not of our race, of all. There are no enemies for Creator, because He is holding in His embrace the whole of creation. There are 7 trillion planets with humans. Just imagine the figure. 7,000 billion planets with humans. They're all, each of the individuals is in Creator's hands. All the creation is in Creator's hands. So where could be the enemies against Creator? Even those revolting against Him are loved with this very same love, energy vibrations of Creator and by Creator. Creator simply has no even the smallest blink of consciousness that would be against anyone. Therefore, He has no enemy. And only the animal mind, which is dominant in such a savage human, can wage wars against his own brethren. So it shows what a degradation has reached the mind of this human, that spiritual side of the mind is absolutely rejected and being kept in darkness, while the dark side of the mind, which is full of different vices like greediness, like exploitation of his own brethren, like desire to be popular, to grab as much power as possible, as much wealth as possible. These vices are dominant in that personality character. And it is impossible to change by even waging wars and reaching victories, conquering other nations. It's just, I will tell you, but listen to my assertion. I'm to tell you. Those conquerors in reality are losers, because they are losing to their own self-pride. They consider they are winners, champions, but they are losing their own spiritual personality, which is full of eternal virtues of Creator, eternal values of Creator. And these are the qualities of Creator's character: mercy, justice, truth, goodness, love, wisdom, cosmic insight, and unlimited desire to do goodness to others and for the benefit of all. So this is the future of this humanity. But in between the current moment and this bright future, an enormous darkness, enormous suffering, and horrible trouble. Ponder my words, especially those in political authorities, because you are controlling all in every country by your unlawful, undivine deeds of evil. That's my warning to you that I'm passing through my lips, what I'm receiving from Creator Himself, receiving right at this very moment. So celebrate Easter if you are a Catholic, meaningfully. Think what I've just heard from me. In reality, from Creator Himself through my lips, as I represent Creator as His ambassador, an apostle of Jesus and His partner, Nebadoni.